In just a moment, but first, let's bring in National Trial Attorney Michael Jaafar joining us today. Thank you for joining both of us here today, Michael. Now, listen, the videos that the neighbors have shown have been hard to see and B, some graphic details in it that we can't show, but I have to say that the prosecution contends that those videos make clear that the victim did not get physical with the defendant. The defendant pulled the gun, shot the victim. Video's best evidence. Is this a hard case to say, no, it was self-defense?
Well, of course, yeah. Anytime that you have any indication that you were the aggressor in a situation and somebody, an unarmed person, ended up being dead, is very, very difficult. And I always tell, defense attorneys that you always have something to prove when you're defending a client. Even though the burden of proof is not technically on you, you have something to prove in every single case. If you don't have something to prove, if you didn't have something to prove, you wouldn't be on trial. So you definitely have something to prove. And also, 12 human beings are weighing your fate, and those people, they almost like they need to be sold by one side or the other. And as a criminal defense attorney, I also say you're basically a glorified car salesman when you're defending a client. You got to sell your product to your customer, and so it's very difficult when the video evidence does not show that he swung at him. And I know it's not the highest quality, so theoretically it could still be possible, but at the end of the day, one person was unarmed and that person ended up being dead. I will say that in Montana, there is no duty legally for the one person to retreat, even if they could retreat safely. That doesn't mean that it gets them out of jail, because you still have to prove that you were under threat. You had an imminent threat for your life. So to your point, Judge Ashley, the video show that there may not have been any imminent threat to his life. And so at the end of the day, he may well get convicted if the jury believes that he basically shot him and he was not provoked.
Mike, I think one of the things that the defense has done thus far is really trying to undermine that video, talking about the quality of it, not very good, perhaps frames having dropped out based on the quality of the video and where it was gotten from. Now, given that, there are some things on the video you can see that can suggest aggression. So one of the things that I saw, which I know, again, it could be interpreted many ways, but subjectively, the guy takes a cigarette out of his mouth and flicks it to the ground in a way that you see prior to fights. And the guy says he was threatening him. Would any of that be enough under these circumstances for him to claim self-defense when he shoots at him 7 times?
There are so many cases where it's not even a close call. This is not one of those cases. It's a very close call, because the jury are going to look at these videos. These videos act as a Rorschach test. Whatever you want to see, you're going to see. If you want to see aggression, you're going to see aggression. If you want to see somebody who overreacted, you're going to see somebody who overreacted. You just showed why somebody might look at this and say there's aggression, but then another person might look at it and say it doesn't justify you shooting somebody. It was an overreaction, right? So it's a close call, but the jurors are going to look at these videos and they're going to be a Rorschach test.
Yeah, and don't forget, the use of force has to be proportionate with the threat. Right. And there's no inclination that he was coming at him with any kind of weapon, although there was a knife in his pocket, so that may rear its head again in this trial. All right, Mike, stand by. I want to head back to Montana for more testimony. Let's bring back in our guest for this hour, National Trial Attorney Michael Jaafar, to discuss. Michael, 19 hours and 7 minutes it took them to come to this verdict, whatever it is. There were a lot of charges, so it was a difficult case to work through, but it seems they worked through it and did what they had to do. Took breaks, smoked breaks, walking breaks, but ultimately came up after 19 hours.
This was a very difficult case for these jurors. Very, very difficult case. And you know what? It's kind of a tragedy, because at the end of the day, look, these two people are immigrants from the Middle East. I'm allowed to say this because I'm also an immigrant from the Middle East. So are my parents, so are my siblings, so are all my extended family and aunts and uncles. So I think the jury sat back and looked at this case, and it became pretty apparent that this man did not properly acclimate to what it meant to be an American citizen, right? We've all gotten the counseling when we immigrate to the United States. It's the land of freedom. You have to be prepared for what freedom gives you. It gives you not only freedom to worship the way you want and do what you want, but all of that also extends to your family. I think the jury saw that video and they saw a father attack his daughter for no reason other than the fact that she had a boyfriend. I know that his defense was there were other reasons she ran away. At the end of the day, I think the jury found that he did that he grossly overreacted, and that it became criminal. And it was only a question for them as to whether or not the criminality of his conduct rose to the level of basically throwing him in a cage for 20, 30. I didn't even know that you had up to life in prison with that second charge. That I did not know until you read it. So I think that's what happened. At the end of the day, it's tragic. It's sad. I think what happened with his with the defendant was they were hoping that the extended family would get to the daughter and tell her, come into the case, intercede on behalf of your parents. You don't want your parents to be in jail for the rest of your life. You have siblings. I think they were banking on that. In that culture, you bank on something like that, and I don't think that delivered for them. I think it's sad. I don't know if they're going to be convicted or not, but the jury really did their homework, and they were put in a very tough position. At the end of the day, that's my take on this. I have direct insight into the culture, so I know that this was a gross overreaction. People in their community would frown on what he did, but it's not a shock that he did what he did and how he did it. And that his wife
Mike,
stood
it's
by
interesting
him.
because in many cultures, I know in my house, if somebody was getting in trouble, you might get sent to your aunt's house in Puerto Rico, let's say, or somewhere else to sort of, straighten them out, get them away from whatever
all the
influences that they were on. So it's not, many cultures.
That's not surprising.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah.
Michael, I want to ask you this, and I want to listen to some of the sound, but to me, part of the issue for me with the second-degree attempted murder was whether or not the father intended to kill Fatima. Let's listen to a little bit of Fatima's testifying about how she felt. That's what she thought. Do you think the prosecution proved that he intended to kill Fatima?
Before the daughter testified, I did not think so. I thought that the video where her arm went limp hurt him, but I don't think so. With the daughter's testimony, tragic, and I think that she got them closer to it, much closer to it than I thought would ever happen. And what I see, again, as an immigrant from the Middle East, what I see is she has no accent. This is a young lady who grew up in the United States, who was acclimated. Her father was not. And so for her to go into court and testify that I thought my father was going to kill me, knowing full well the gravity of what she was doing, means that the rift, it's his fault. The rift in his family was something he created. Otherwise, his daughter would not have sat in the same courtroom as him and knew that she was twisting the dagger into her dad. So I believe her because of the fact that it's so tragic. And I know that her extended family reached out to her and begged her not to testify in that way. Because of that, and her going forward means that she really believed sincerely that her father wants to kill her. I really completely believe that the jury will infer that her father arranged a marriage in Iraq to take her to Iraq to marry her off. I fully believe the jury will infer that. Me, as an immigrant to the Middle East, I know exactly that's what happened. Right? Without knowing the family, I know exactly that's what happened. I think that was related to the jury. And there are fathers who come to the United States and they acclimate. My father's a lawyer, educated person. My sister's on the cover of New York Times. There are families that acclimate. There are families that don't. I think the jury will reasonably infer that this family did not acclimate, or at least the father did not, and he put himself in this position. It's a shame.
It's so interesting to hear your comment about extended family, and you believe they would have reached out to her to beg her not to testify, and boy, she was 100%. Compelling.
Yeah, she was certainly compelling. 100%. But she also testified to something, and it sort of highlights a little bit of a contradiction in the prosecution's case. She also said that she didn't think her mother was trying to kill her. Let's take a quick listen to that, Mike, and then I got a question for you. So on the one hand, they're asking her to believe them when she says, I was fear of dying, but then not when she says her mother wasn't. Mike, quickly, your prediction on the verdict here. I only have about 20 seconds.
I think they're going to convict the father of a lesser included charge. I think the mother's going to get convicted. This is going on par with what I thought at the beginning, but the daughter's testimony could sway it. So I wouldn't be shocked if he gets convicted of actually attempted murder, second-degree attempted murder.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what this jury. I had thought maybe hung, but at this point, clearly that's not the case. All right, thank you to Michael Jaafar, as always, for joining us tonight.